I thought the worst moment of my life was watching police search my garage while my neighbors stood outside pretending not to stare. Across the street, Karen looked thrilled. She had spent weeks telling everyone I was hiding something illegal. But just as the officers were getting ready to leave, one unexpected question changed everything. Suddenly, Karen wasn't smiling anymore, and nobody in the neighborhood understood why. To understand why that question mattered, you need to understand Karen Whitmore. My name is Thomas Harlan, and I moved into Pine Ridge Estates after my wife passed. I wasn't rich, loud, or important. I was just the old guy with a toolbox who fixed loose porch rails, squeaky gates, broken cabinet hinges, and sticky doors for neighbors who couldn't afford to call a contractor. Most times, I didn't charge anything. A cup of coffee, a slice of pie, or a simple thank you was enough. That was probably why people trusted me, and probably why Karen couldn't stand me. Karen was the HOA compliance chair, and she treated that title like a federal position. She fined people for trash cans, flower pots, mailbox colors, porch lights, and once, Mrs. Bell's bird bath because it created visual clutter. She carried a clipboard everywhere and wrote things down like every flower pot was evidence. At first, her attention toward my garage was quiet. She drove slowly past whenever my garage door was open. Then she started counting my deliveries. One afternoon, I caught her taking pictures of a box of chair legs I had ordered online. "You're receiving quite a few packages." "Thomas," she said, "they're for furniture repairs." She smiled without warmth. "That's what you say." A few days later, she emailed me asking why my garage lights were still on after 9:30 p.m. She attached 3 time-stamped photos from across the street, as if I had committed a felony by sanding a rocking chair after dinner. Then came the smell complaints. The smell was wood stain, varnish, and cedar dust. I explained that more than once. But Karen always wrote something down like my answer had disappointed her. "I've watched enough crime documentaries to know how these things start," she told Mrs. Bell, loud enough for me to hear. Then the HOA letters arrived. First, suspected unapproved business activity. Then, possible hazardous materials. Then, chemical odor complaints. Looking back, Karen's biggest mistake was creating a trail. At the time, I had no idea where that trail would lead. 3 nights before the police came, Earl Dawson knocked on my door. Earl wasn't the kind of man who knocked unless something was seriously wrong. He was a retired accountant and had served on the HOA board years before Karen took over compliance. He handed me a folder. "Keep copies of everything she sends you," he said. "Why?" Earl glanced toward Karen's house. "There are some things around here Karen doesn't like discussed." Before I could ask what he meant, he walked away. 2 mornings later, 3 police cars pulled up outside my garage. Karen stood across the street with her clipboard, looking proud enough to burst. The officers searched my shelves, workbench, storage cabinets, paint cans, and old furniture frames. They found sandpaper, clamps, stain, varnish, and half a rocking chair I was fixing for Mrs. Bell. No drugs, no lab, nothing illegal. Then one officer picked up the complaint packet Karen had submitted. He flipped through it once, then again. Finally, he turned toward Karen and asked, "Mrs. Whitmore, where exactly did these documents come from?" Karen's face changed so quickly that even Mrs. Bell noticed from across the street. The officer held up the complaint packet, but he didn't hand it back. Karen gave a small laugh. "Officer, I think we're losing focus here. You were called because of a possible drug operation, not because of HOA paperwork." That was Karen's favorite move. If she couldn't answer a question, she made the other person feel unqualified to ask it. But the officer didn't move. He looked down at the packet again. "This paperwork was submitted with your complaint, ma'am." Karen lifted her chin. "Yes, because I believe in being thorough." Mrs. Bell actually lowered her coffee cup. Mr. Jensen stopped pretending to walk his dog. Even Earl, who usually looked like nothing in this world, surprised him anymore. narrowed his eyes at the papers in the officer's hand. From where I stood, I couldn't read the pages clearly. I only saw columns, dates, and names. It didn't look like a garage complaint. It looked like something from an office file. Karen noticed everyone staring and tried to take control again. "Thomas receives unusual packages," she said. "His garage lights stay on late. There are chemical smells. Most furniture restorers don't behave this suspiciously." I almost laughed, but I didn't. The officer glanced back into my garage, where half a rocking chair sat upside down on a blanket. "Ma'am," he said calmly, "we didn't find anything illegal." Karen's mouth tightened. "That doesn't mean there wasn't something here before." That line hung there a second too long. Then Earl stepped forward. "Just enough to be heard! Those documents shouldn't be in that packet!" Karen snapped her head toward him. "Earl, you're not on the board anymore." "No," Earl said. "But I remember what certain records look like." That was all he said. Not too much. Not enough to explain anything. Just enough to make everyone look back at Karen. Someone had already called Harold Finch, the HOA president, after seeing 3 police cars outside my house. A few minutes later, he came walking down the sidewalk in bedroom slippers and a windbreaker, looking like a man who regretted answering his phone. Harold was not brave. At meetings, Karen talked over him so often that people forgot he was technically in charge. But when the officer showed him the packet, Harold went pale. He didn't speak at first. He just adjusted his glasses and looked through the pages slowly. Karen folded her arms. "Harold, tell them this is standard compliance material." Harold didn't answer her. For the first time all morning, nobody was looking at my garage. They were looking at Karen. Then Harold tapped the last page with one shaky finger. "This page," he said quietly, "wasn't in the copy I approved." Karen took one step forward, and for the first time since the police arrived, her voice cracked. "Don't open that." "Don't open that?" Karen said it softly, but the whole street heard her. The officer stopped with his hand on the folded page. For a moment, nobody moved. Mrs. Bell's coffee cup froze halfway to her mouth. Mr. Jensen stopped whispering to his dog. Even Earl looked at Karen like he had just heard the one sentence he had been waiting for. Karen cleared her throat and tried to recover. "I mean, there may be private HOA information in there," she said quickly. "And frankly, I find it inappropriate that we're discussing paperwork when Thomas's garage is the real concern." The officer looked back at my garage, where half a rocking chair sat upside down on a blanket. "Ma'am," he said, "there is no drug lab." Karen started talking faster then. She blamed the management company. She blamed Harold. She blamed the board's filing system. At one point, she even blamed confusing software updates, though nobody had mentioned a computer. Harold finally found his voice. "Karen," he said, "you told this board everything was under control." She turned on him instantly. "Because it was, until you let this become a public circus." That was the last time she sounded confident. The officer unfolded the page. It was a bank deposit slip, clipped to a handwritten note. Harold stared at the number, then looked again, like his eyes were refusing to accept it. "That can't be right," he whispered. I couldn't see every detail from where I stood, but I saw the amount circled in dark ink, 43s and dollars. Earl leaned close enough to see it and said, "That looks like association money," Karen snapped. "You don't know what it is," but her voice didn't have any power left in it. Then the officer asked Karen if the white Lexus across the street belonged to her. She said yes. Asked if there were any HOA documents in the vehicle. Karen laughed once, sharp and nervous. "Absolutely not." A county investigator arrived a short time later, calm and quiet, which somehow made Karen more nervous. She didn't argue with Karen. She didn't raise her voice. She simply reviewed the page, spoke with Harold, and then asked Karen for her keys. Karen held her purse tight against her side. "I don't consent to some fishing expedition," she said. The investigator nodded. Then we'll secure the vehicle while we handle this properly. That sentence drained the color from Karen's face. After a few more quiet words, Karen handed over the keys. Nobody spoke as the investigator walked toward the Lexus. The street had gone silent in that strange way a neighborhood gets when everyone knows something important is about to happen. Karen took one step after her, then stopped. The trunk clicked. It lifted slowly. Inside were two file boxes, several sealed envelopes, and a small bank bag tucked behind a folded blanket. Harold whispered, "Oh my God!" Karen didn't explain. She didn't accuse. She didn't correct anyone's procedure. For once, Karen had no sentence ready. Later, we learned the bank bag and records were connected to just over $43,000 in missing HOA funds. Within a week, the board suspended Karen from every committee position. Within a month, an outside audit began. By the time it ended, Karen was gone from the compliance committee for good, and every fine she had pushed through that year was pulled back for review. At the emergency HOA meeting, nobody defended her. Nobody argued for her. Nobody even looked at her. That was worse. Mrs. Bell got her birdbath fine removed. Mr. Jensen got his porch light fine removed. My so-called drug lab complaint disappeared completely. Earl sat beside me and said, "Sometimes the paperwork buries the person holding the shovel." Karen spent weeks trying to convince everyone I was hiding something dangerous in my garage. In the end, the only person hiding anything was Karen herself.
This story teaches a real life lesson. The loudest person in the room is not always the honest one. When someone falsely accuses you or tries to damage your reputation, do not react with anger. Stay calm, protect yourself, and keep every piece of proof. Thomas did not case revenge. He trusted the process, documented everything, and let the truth come out. In the end, evidence speaks louder than rumors, powered, or a clipboard.